Good afternoon, everyone. Brian, do we have most people from the waiting room in the meeting now?
We do, Chancellor.
Okay. Thanks, everybody, for joining us for another town hall, this one for faculty and staff of UNCA. And I am really grateful for your time today. I have decided that over the next coming weeks, and probably 6 to 8 weeks, I would like to have the chance to gather in a town hall format to answer your questions and to tell you what we know at any one point, and to hear from you about ongoing concerns as we get closer to opening and after we've opened. So the next town hall for faculty and staff has been tentatively scheduled for next Monday, the 27th of July at 2 p.m. So I'd like you to hold that time and join us if in any way you are able. I also want to begin our remarks today and answer your questions for the bulk of our time together by saying I believe that though it's difficult, this is one of the highest points of uncertainty that we are facing as a university community. There are various different headwinds coming at us. Most particularly, we all thought in our planning models in May and June that the coronavirus would be attenuating and subsiding a bit out of warm weather and all of us being more outside than in, and that the positivity rate for infections, not just here in our region, but nationwide, would be tapering off before what the scientists are telling us is a for sure reactivation of the virulence of the virus sometime when the weather gets colder, most likely in November and December. Obviously, just the opposite is true. The nation is fully engulfed in the effects of COVID raining down on our lives, on our institutions, on our families, on our workspaces. And so we are making the best decisions that we can. Let me also say that the decisions that we're making are ones that we strive to make for our community, but now the system, the UNC system, is the one that will be making decisions about whether we open or we close. Kai and I do not have the authority to do that, and so we now must respond to some of the angst that is in play across the state about not just higher education, of course, but K through 12. Last Thursday afternoon, the chancellors received an email from Randy Ramsey asking that we do some contingency scenario planning for our university finances. His specific directive, and it was called a directive and not a request, was that we work with various university leaders to determine what a 25% cut would look like in our budget, and correspondingly, though in greater measure, a 50% cut in our budgetary finances, particularly the revenue side. We are beginning this work, have started it over the weekend. It is due to the system office by late in the day this Thursday, and there will be discussion of this among the chancellors with our new president of the system, Peter Hans, on Friday of this coming week. You probably have also seen the Policy Watch article that I think outlines very well the tensions at this particular moment in time about some feeling strongly, including some students and some faculty on all of our campuses, that we should open and be something other than just online, which of course we did in mid-March for all of our activities academically. I spoke with the Faculty Senate Executive Committee with the support of Moretta Cameron and her colleagues on Friday afternoon. Also, Heather has spoken with Emma Anderson, who until there's a new executive committee on staff council, has also been briefed about this. We also have done some videos of our current campus spaces, most particularly right now in Highsmith, by Stan Sweeney. Dr. Rebecca Hale did one with a classroom, I believe it looks like it's in Carpin, of the dining hall services and changes that have been made to de-densify the dining hall and open up retail takeout spaces. And there's a further video coming on Facebook or YouTube that's going to be from the library. I've asked I've asked Sarah Broberg to send all of those as a bundle to you. They are on the Corona website on our own homepage. But if you look at those, you may understand the Herculean effort that's been made by physical plant, by the EOC, by frankly senior staff, by a number of faculty, including Keith Crumpy, who's been a champion of helping us to adjust to these new conditions. Just this morning, some of us filmed what was felt like a very awkward commencement ceremony, and are in the process tomorrow of traveling to Atlanta to film the keynote speaker for our commencement, who is receiving an honorary degree, Dr. Patrice Harris, who's the current president of the American Medical Association. The commencement celebration video will be made public on August 1st. Sarah, I think that's a Saturday. Am I right on that? Saturday morning, August 1 at 9 a.m. And you will see our very odd circumstances in videoing that at the base of the library steps today, complete with the bear walking right through our filming while it was going on. I want to say particularly to all of you that I had the chance this weekend to hang around campus a bit, particularly Saturday morning and Saturday late afternoon, as we welcome students into the first year class who are dropping, and some sophomores I think as well, who are dropping their things back off at campus and then returning back home until the start of school. I would say there is worry on the part of parents and even some students. There is also some excitement. So again, it's an uncertain and difficult time. I think I can speak as Kai and I just discussed this a bit ago. Kai and I both are at a point where our anxiety is high. There is a great deal of uncertainty in terms of what it is most likely that we must do or expect to happen. I think there are still chances that we could be online the whole semester, but those decisions again would have to be made by the UNC system leadership. So we share your anxiety, we share your worry, and yet we are trying very hard to do everything that's humanly possible to be ready to open in person. Given the registration tallies at this point, Kai has told me that roughly 40 to 45% of our courses will be in person only. Roughly 30% of our courses will be online only. And somewhere in that 30 or 32, 35% left are those that will be hybrid with some in-person meeting and the bulk of the class being online. So let me stop there and proceed with your questions and wanting to know questions that arise for you in the chat as well. And we'll move through these as quickly as we can. I'm going to tell you when I don't know the way to answer a question because of all the matters in play at this current time, and promise to keep you posted as we go through. The first question was, what is the scientific proof that plexiglass between students allows them to be safer than 6 feet apart, and in some cases safer than 1.5 feet apart? David Weldon answers this. The use of plexiglass glass is best practice. You see it in a variety of public spaces. It has not been scientifically proven as a virus mitigation tactic because the research has not been done to this point. Face coverings have been scientifically proven as an effective virus mitigation tactic, regardless of plexiglass and other engineering controls in place. Students will be required to wear face coverings at all times in the classroom. Second question, what is the formal procedure for obtaining disinfecting products for our classrooms and labs? And will a regularly updated inventory of products be made available to ensure we won't run out? We are at this point fully, we've garnered fully all of the disinfectant for hand, for surfaces, for classrooms, for disinfection of all areas on campus, from the dining hall to the residence halls, to the spaces that will be for quarantine and isolated students. We have procured that equipment and those materials to keep us safe and clean. If you have need for individual cleaning supplies in your office or your lab space or in a particular area that you're unsure will be treated, please call David Todd or David Weldon at Physical Plant and let them know of your concerns. I certainly want to avoid anyone on our faculty or staff spending their own funds to ensure that their space is clean. When are we getting the university branded masks? We have already received university branded face coverings from the vendor late last week. There will be 2 masks given to all faculty, all staff, and all students. We will have some additional ones for vendors, for students who come on campus to take an admissions interview, for candidates who might be willing and interested to interview if they're interviewing for a position on our campus. So at this point, we are well apprised. We also will order face masks like these and maybe a few more if this continues into second semester. What will happen when a breakout occurs and all learning is forced to go remote? Will on-campus students quarantine in residence halls, or will they be expected to go home like last spring? Can they come back? Who specifically, Chancellor in consultation with Health Department or UNC system, will make this decision? First of all, our goal and the goal of the other 16 UNC system schools, when we open, if we open, is to be a very resilient place. So if we would have an outbreak that is small, that's noticed because students are doing faithfully their symptom checking and coming in and out of doorways in large high traffic areas like the library, like Highsmith, other places, we will be able to catch students who are symptomatic and who need to be tested and quarantined. Now, the big unknown for all of us today in our culture is who are the asymptomatic people? We'll be doing the symptom checking. We'll be doing some randomized testing with students. We will also have a rapid response team of physicians and nursing staff from Mayheck and Mission Hospital that will be serving us in the event there would be any outbreak on our campus. That will include trained student ambassadors who will be doing some of the contact tracing for our students. So it's not likely, unless the outbreak has the metrics that the Department of Health would say suggest that we go to online fully. We're always going to remain open, but we would go to online fully. And at that point, that decision would be made by the UNC Board of Governors in partnership with the President, Peter Hans. If students are sent home, we will be likely making the decision because of the science that suggests the virus may return in greater prevalence. Again, that was compared to what we thought would be an attenuated spread this summer. We are likely to send students home and they can remain at home. If students needed protection from domestic violence issues, from inability to access broadband, the same kinds of criteria that we used to allow between 250 and 300 students to stay with us in the spring, we will employ those very same procedures and keep our students as safe as possible. We have adequate rooms set aside for quarantine, which means someone who has tested positive. And for quarantine, which is someone who's been exposed or who has symptoms but has yet to be tested positive as a result. And the isolation, which is for someone who has been tested positive. All of their meals will be delivered. We have a very intricate and beautifully crafted way that the student affairs folks have gotten that for any students who are in that situation. Have we set a specific threshold for either the number of positive cases or trend lines? These metrics will come from the UNC system to us probably in the next week or 10 days. It has to do with a variety of measures of what's called the ambient spread of the virus, which includes the percentage of tests versus the percentage positive, the percentage of students who are symptomatic and need to be quarantined, the percentage of hospitalizations, the percentage relative to hospitalizations, the number of deaths, and so on. So we will be following the guidance of the epidemiologists at UNC Chapel Hill who have been advising the chancellors and the provosts over the course of the last 15 weeks. How transparent will the university be regarding on-campus COVID data, like the number of tests conducted, number of positive, asymptomatic, symptomatic, and so on? What will be our internal communications plan? And are there designated campus liaisons to keep that information flowing to you? First of all, we will be superbly transparent. We will continue the commitment to transparency, candor, honesty, and clarity if we do not know an answer. We also intend, while protecting HIPAA laws that protect anyone's individual identity by gender, by residence hall room, by student class year, we will protect students' individual identity, but we will be aggregating data and sharing it with you on a weekly basis and daily if that should become needed. So we intend to continue to be completely transparent, and please count on that from all of us. What is the university's plan if COVID-19 cases in the community result in death or a link to students returning to campus? Is the university protected from a lawsuit? How will we be able to repair our reputation after something like this? Obviously, this is a significant worry. We will be taking every precaution that is best practice protocols. The senior staff of the institution, along with some other campus leaders, are given the opportunity to employ the very best practices that we can to prevent any illness, we hope, and certainly to protect any death. Needless to say, it's a realistic worry, and I know that the system is aware of how worried the chancellors are should we have someone who's working on campus exposed to something that then comes home to them and causes serious illness or death in a family. The next is, will our campus have access to rapid testing for students, faculty, and staff showing symptoms? Yes, we will have rapid testing. Because the virus has resurged, the priority for turnaround on testing time is for retirement centers and hospitals. But higher education and K through 12 will now move into that same category of priority testing over some businesses and that kind of thing, if we open. We do have rapid testing available. You can certainly get that. Staff and faculty through your independent medical providers. And if someone on campus needs this, we'll have all those protocols out to you before we actually would open. One person is saying average testing turnaround in Asheville is currently 7 to 8 days. Well, that is true for many who are getting the test by being with their PCP, their primary care physician. That said, those in the hospital, those in the retirement centers are literally getting their test results much more quickly. We are advocating strongly that the 6 residential institutions, 4 private and the 2 of us that are public, be moved into that category for the first 2 months that we convene and bring the community, our academic communities back. So at this point, we hope that the test results would be 2 to 3 days, no longer than 3 to 5 days. We do have places, again, for students who have been tested and have no result to be quarantined if they've been exposed. Okay, I'm curious to know if there's any enforcement behind our policy and community expectation of face coverings among faculty and staff as well as students. Sarah, I would like to call on you, please, to mention to everyone the community statement that we're asking all to abide, and I will talk about the enforcement of this, please.
Thank you, Chancellor. So the working group comprised of faculty, staff, student representatives, as well as a parent representative and an alumni representative, have been working together for the past few weeks to develop a statement, a commitment of respect, mutual respect and care for all. That statement is in the final process of approval and design, and we'll be getting that out to you this week, ideally. It really outlines the commitment that each of us shares to adhere to the best practices of hand washing, of wearing face coverings, of maintaining social distancing, of staying home if you feel ill, and also seeking health advice from a professional if needed. It also outlines the university's commitment. So as a comparison piece or a companion piece, so there's an expectation that you will wash your hands. The university's expectation and commitment is that we will provide hand sanitizer in all areas. And if you've been on campus, you've seen that already implemented. And there's a companion statement for the university for each of those expectations from our wider campus community as well.
We will likely have a handful, and I hope no more than that, of repeat offenders to this requirement. We know that in this time of COVID, there are three key things that used together constantly can almost be as safe for the individual and the people they're around as a good, solid vaccine. That is face covering, that is social distancing, that is washing hands, that includes appropriate respiratory ethics around people that we're with. If those three things are managed, we know that we will have a much better chance of mitigating the virus close to zero, or certainly not much higher than 0%. If we have offenders who are unwilling to abide these community standards, we will be approaching, certainly with students, we will be approaching them and considering asking them to leave campus and to take the rest of their courses online or to step out for the rest of the semester. If there are faculty and staff who would be offenders on this, we'll work out a system that is fair, that is equitable, but brings the attention to compliance to the forefront for each one of our staff colleagues. We know that this is a serious first step in mitigating the virus if we were to come together. So we hope everyone will participate in good-hearted work here. We will also have 40 students who will be chosen as health ambassadors and will be helping to remind their peers, but also all of us. If we don't have a mask on, not going in that building. If we're not willing to have our temperature taken, it's not the day to go to the Ramsey Library or the Highsmith Union. And so we hope that these will be the ballast that keeps us strong and steady when we open and move forward. The next question is about shared ventilation system. What's the status of our HVA systems across campus? David Weldon and David Todd put together this answer. Campus operations has been closely monitoring building reopening guidelines published by the CDC and the World Health Organization, among other professional trade organizations on heating, ventilating, and air conditioning. Prior to the start of the fall semester, all HVA systems have been inspected for proper operation to ensure that they meet ventilation standards while maintaining conditions, that promote indoor air quality, and all air filters have been replaced. There is one building that is complicated in this way, and it is the Justice Center. So we will be minimizing or even eliminating where possible any use of justice unless it absolutely is necessary. All the rest of the buildings meet those standards as outlined by CDC, and I'm grateful for the work that David Weldon and David Todd have done. Okay, other issues, the start of fall semester. Number one, Governor Cooper's mandate limits gatherings to no more than 10 people. This has been extended until August 7th. Are we truly expected to return to work and begin teaching classes on the 10th? Also, will the university be given exemptions from state phased guidelines? Until this morning, we all had been led to understood, the chancellors, the chief academic officers, and the comms folks, that if we did not move to phase 3, that we would not be opening. Sarah checked with the head of comms at the UNC system, and evidently we are being given an exemption from the state governor's orders. If we are being asked to open, we will be seen in an exemption status, evidently, from that. I think there's more to learn here that we don't currently know, and we'll keep you posted on that as we go forward. Next is it possible to take a phased approach to reopening that allows classes with a greater need for in-person instruction to be prioritized? Kai, I would like you to make a response to this one, if you will, because it's my understanding you've already done this as a way of setting up classes and class times, or some of it.
So I guess the question was, can we take a phased approach to opening? Is that right?
Yes, that allows classes with greater need for in-person instruction to open first and be prioritized.
So I guess the way that I would answer that is that the approach that we've taken is we've tried to ask all faculty to identify if they themselves are at risk, and we've, I think, granted just about everyone who's indicated that they have a need or a risk of being in person to allow for those folks to be to deliver their courses online. Outside of that, we have taken the approach of having courses. There are a few strategic courses that we've made decisions on based on faculty making the case that it makes sense for that course to be offered online. It isn't phased in the way that I guess I originally heard that, which is to say that some may start later or at a different in a different phase and then transition to another phase of another format. And so I think our approach has tried to consider where folks, the individual faculty, the individual curricular needs, and to do that, but we have not shifted the courses. We do hope to be one of the factors, just one of the factors, and I would say it's secondary to health concerns, is trying to provide students a kind of clarity about what it is that they are kind of getting themselves into. So what is the format of their course? And so to the extent that we can be clear about that, we've tried to do that.
Thanks, Kai. The next question is given the phases really not mattering, evidently, how much notice before the beginning of the semester will we be given if we have to remain remote? The governor is supposed to give his orders for phasing on the 7th of August. Final decisions will be made about K through 12 schools in the county and the city on the 17th of August. So I think we should stay nimble and prepared to do what we are asked to do to the best of our ability, because I think we'll be given a very small window of time if in fact we are going to online. A number of us on the Chancellor's group have made a clear statement about the incredible work that our faculty have done on our individual campuses and how faculty are prepared for the registered courses as they were given to students and registered for. So just know that I think it could be, I have a sense that many decisions are going to be made here in the last minute over the next 2 or 3 weeks. I've heard students expressing concern about coming back to the city and renting an apartment and where they could stay if they needed to go totally online again. We're working with individual students through Bill Haggard's office and Jill Moffitt and Robert Straub and others in case they have any concerns, in case some of them for health and cleanliness reasons actually want to come back onto campus and away from their apartments. We're also working with students with various different mental health issues who have decided it's too much anxiousness for them to return to campus, and so they may want to stay off campus and do classes only online. And Kai and his team and Melissa and others are going to be working through this in the weeks ahead. Let's see, will county and city school decision to begin the semester remotely for high schools have any bearing on our decision? Again, I think it's a factor that the UNC system leadership is considering, but I don't think that we can make a decision separately from the UNC system. At least that's what I've been led to believe at this point. In the previous report to the university's response on coronavirus, it was mentioned that the university had planned for best case, mid case, and worst case, and the virus's financial impact. Are these scenarios and plans in play? Is there a new mandate from the university system for double-digit loss? As I mentioned at the beginning, the directive from Chairman and Board of Governors member Rick Ramsey is that we look at a 25% downturn in our budget and a 50%. All of us are wise enough to know that that will mean some effect on the workforce at the university. We will be working on these matters over the course of the next 4 or 5 days. I will be participating in a number of chancellors' calls. One is Tuesday morning, one is Friday morning, and I will be able to share with all of you by next Monday where things stand. I do believe, as I put in the email to you Friday evening, these are planning scenarios that are being used to make the case for us to continue with our plans to open. At no point has a Board of Governors member, Mr. Hans, Dr. Roper, asked that we prepare budget scenarios with those deep cuts to be implemented now. If we were not to open at all and have no student tuition fee revenue coming to us, our early estimates of the very worst case would be that we would be between $12 and $15 million underwater at that point. Whether any CARES or HEROES money that would be forthcoming to us and the rest of the institutions, that's very unclear. What I do know is that we will be following UNC system guidance, and we'll follow that to the very best of our ability. I will share with the Senate executive, faculty Senate exec, and with staff council leadership, and certainly on the town hall, a little bit more about what we've learned about why we were asked to do this last Thursday and Friday, why in such a short time frame, and what that effect could or could not have on our campus. So again, promise you fair and open transparency on that. There's a lot of work to be done to meet this directive. How are COVID-19 funds being allocated? There's an inference here that the money has been flowing from the federal government. In fact, the money has not been flowing from the federal government. We've only gotten one tranche, and that money has been to assist students in the spring who were evicted from their apartments, lost their jobs, or had financial distress in the immediacy of shutting down the in-person instruction and moving most and some of our students off campus. We do anticipate that there will be a second flow of funds for COVID-19 restitution. It's for small businesses as well as for universities and so on, but none of that money is here. The two exceptions from which we are benefiting, thanks to the help of MAHEC leader Jeff Heck, Susan Mims, the Director of Public Health there, and our own Amy Lanou, we got a North Carolina Policy Collaborative grant for $650,000 or so for UNC Asheville to do the rapid response team development, the health ambassadors for our campus and for the other 5 four-year universities and colleges, and for the statewide comorbidity study because of our population here in the West. So I'm very proud that we secured that grant and very grateful to Amy Lanou and her talented colleagues in the Center for Health and Wellness. We also are getting a piece of the $4.8 million that was given to MAHEC. And we have secured just a very tiny bit of funding from the Dogwood Trust. Most of that is going for PPE and masks and antiseptic supplies and that kind of thing. So there is more money to come at some point, but it's almost as though we have to earn it in some way, and I'm still unsure exactly, but we'll tee up to be at the front of the line as soon as we can. And I am very grateful for that grant. What is the likelihood that staff or faculty will lose jobs? Again, if we would have to implement what was now only being requested as a planning scenario, whether it would be at 25% or at 50%, we would have furloughs and layoffs of some extent on our campus. We're already razor thin on our budget, as all of you know from our revitalization discussions. You may be seeing a set of data that puts us in a parish category. Please look askance at that data. The system is well aware that we've been working hard to make the case for revitalization. We've talked about the ways that the institution has weakened. We've been open and candid about that, but we also have champions who are wanting us to get stronger. So I want to make sure that we look a bit askance and with a raised eyebrow here at the kind of data that would suggest that UNC Asheville is about to perish or go under. Nothing that I have heard would even mention or insinuate that that could be a possibility. So I remain very resistant to any of that kind of talk. Any budget cuts will be deep and they will be difficult if we are asked to make them, and certainly if we do not open in person. Please stay tuned to more information later for that. We also are dealing at the same time with the viruses unveiling all the medical inequities. The murdering of George Floyd has raised again for us the racial inequities and the racial injustice in our country, the oppression of police forces in some places, and the oppression of Black and brown colleagues and people. Together with the senior staff, with selected faculty colleagues, with some student leadership led right now by London Newton, we are creating as a draft for all to contribute to a racial justice roadmap for our university for not just this fall, but for the next 2 years ahead. We'll be distributing that just as we open school back for in-person instruction. And if we don't open, we'll still be sharing that, so the work that we can do together to bring down structural racism where it exists in our university, but also in our region and in larger ways for our students and for our faculty. So stay tuned on that. We will continue that work and strengthen it going forward in the next number of years. The next set of questions emanate from concerns about academic affairs issues. So Kai, would you please now pick up on the academic affairs area?
Absolutely. And I'm just going to try to read through some of these questions and answer them kind of in turn. And I want to start with one that I think seems to be, at least it was on the chat I saw, precisely what should faculty do if a student refuses to wear a mask? We did indicate earlier that there is this expectation that folks will wear a mask. But if in the event that a student really refuses, my hope is that the first step would be to point out, or I guess you witness that a student is not wearing a mask. I think the first step is to point out there are masks available, to essentially make the assumption that it is not in defiance, but rather perhaps they just forgot it or don't have access. There will be masks available in every building. And so the first step is to point out that there are some masks available. If it really does turn out to be the case that a student is refusing to wear a mask, then we would ask a student to leave. Just as I saw in some of the chat comments, it is absolutely the case. You have to wear a mask. It's as simple as that. And if you're not, then you'll have to leave the space. If a student refuses to leave, if there really is that level of defiance against our community standards, then I certainly would, if you feel that it is an untenable position to continue on in class, I think the worst case scenario is a class could be canceled. And I certainly support that if you feel like you have exhausted all other options. And then we will simply need I would ask you to inform us about that student, and then we would simply make it a student judicial case and take it up. And so that's as far as we will go. But we hope, I think as Chancellor Cable said, we hope that we really don't have to do that. How do we respond to students who ask us about taking a class online, particularly those who are trying to go online completely? Maybe, all but one class is already online. And the question also is their tuition different in that circumstance? The answer is that their tuition will be, currently, we have no differentiation between the tuition. And we do expect students to pay the full amount. We are really, I think, taking our lead from the system on any matters related to billing. And so we will follow their mandates on all of those things. There is a difference between a student who has who needs an accommodation, who has a documented need, and we've directed students to a particular website to complete a form, and we certainly want to make sure that you have that link. But every student who needs an accommodation, we're directing them to go through that form, to engage the process, so if there's a need, a documented need, or a suspected documented need, that's the way to go. In the event that it's really a desire, there's no documented need, it's just a hope, there are two possibilities. certainly if you already as a faculty member have a strategy in place, feel free to implement that strategy to make that strategy accessible to that student. I think there are a few that I'm aware of that already have a strategy that they have in place. That's fine. But also feel free to redirect the students to the Academic Success Center to have a conversation about what some of their options are. We're hoping that in most of those cases that we in fact are able to have the student pick from a selection of courses that are already online. But if there's a need to establish with the student an understanding that that is the way that we're handling those who want to do this, that it's an institutional, that's the institutional kind of response, it would absolve the faculty of feeling a certain kind of pressure to do something that is kind of out of the bounds of what you're able to do. We have a limited capacity to be able to support students in this regard. And so we want to make sure that we're accommodating need first, and certainly want to be willing to work with students as much as possible. And to the degree that you can work with students, we want you to be able to do so. But you know, we're limited in terms of our capacity in that regard. So that's essentially how we're hoping to do that. If you have a strategy, go ahead and implement it. But redirect to the Academic Success Center otherwise. But if there's an accommodation and a need, please direct to that form. Will there be an official statement that can be used on syllabi regarding wearing of masks in the classroom and not attending if students have symptoms or are symptomatic of you know, flu-like symptoms, COVID-like symptoms? We are, as I think Sarah indicated, developing a community standards statement. We expect that statement to really be, to encompass all of the things that we would want to say and share with students. And so what we would certainly encourage is pointing to those community standards to be able to say, hey, this is what we expect of every student. Do not come to class if you have any symptoms. You must wear a mask. All of those kinds of things are being laid out in those community standards. And so any way that you can in your syllabi reinforce those standards, absolutely do that. And we want to encourage everyone to do that. What are our contingency plans if faculty show symptoms or come down with the virus? Who will take over classes? What's the process there? I've asked, you know, developing contingency plans was something that we thought a little bit about in the spring. We will have to do the same thing this semester. Every department will look a little different. Every department has slightly different capacities. We have been talking about the 6 or so regional institutions that are also wrestling with this as well, and whether or not there are ways that we can lean on capacity that those institutions have in the event that we need to, let's say, get a faculty member for 2 weeks or a limited period of time. More often than not, it's likely that it means moving the class online for some period and then trying to find a faculty member in that discipline who can take that course. And they will be compensated relative to kind of our adjunct fee schedule and prorated relative to time. That's you know, about as best as we can do at this point, but certainly welcome to hear ideas about how we, in particular instances, might be more creative or have alternative options. But it is the case that every course will have to have some kind of, every faculty member, every course, every department will have to have some kind of contingency plan in the event that someone is not able to be in class for some period of time. How will we handle feedback for faculty? In particular, certainly many feel as though we have not had any break. There are many concerns and that holding faculty to normal productivity standards, particularly for scholarship and service, it just doesn't seem fair in this moment. Certainly recognize and acknowledge that. It is absolutely the case that many faculty have been, there's been almost a complete bleed from March spring break all the way through until now, and I want to acknowledge that, recognize that people have been working extraordinarily hard to be prepared and to do all that's possible to make sure that we can do what we need to in the fall. And certainly with the earlier start, it's actually been very challenging. And certainly if you've taught over the summer, that's exacerbated as well. So certainly recognize that. It's still the case that we want to gather feedback. I think it's important both to the individual faculty, to the institution, and frankly, for the students to be able to have a mechanism of giving some feedback about their experience as well. So we don't want to not have any feedback, but we also want to moderate what that looks like and how it might be used. And not to think of it as, and to consider all of the things that we're under and the duress of the moment to make sure that we're acknowledging that. I will just remind folks that we have added the ability for folks who are pre-tenure to postpone their reviews by a full year. And that's not just for those who are going up this year, but for all faculty who are pre-tenure. And so that is something that we are allowing, permitting. Many have made the decision, made decisions based on information that is now 2 or 3 weeks old. How do we handle changing conditions regarding COVID-19, particularly as they change in Asheville, Buncombe County, and in particular, do faculty teaching in person or hybrid have the authority to just simply decide independently? Do they have the autonomy to simply move their classes to a fully remote platform at any point? Certainly the first concern, as I mentioned just a moment ago, the primary concern is the health and safety of the faculty, the students, of our entire community. And so that will dominate our decision making, but it is the case that we do not want folks to independently simply move their classes online. We do want to make sure that we're providing the kind of clarity to students about what their situation will be. We know that we will need a process to be ongoing, to consider as things change. In addition to the conditions changing kind of in the health state of the region, it's also possible that your particular conditions may change. There may be a need for someone who has a vulnerability to move to your home, or many other potential circumstances. Certainly aware of that. We want to be able to accommodate and adapt to that, and that be our primary concern. We also want to be able to be clear with students about what's going on, and for them to be able to make their decisions about how to make their decisions. Kind of to round that out, many have asked. So look, I'm in a unique position of being able to be, let's say, remote 1 day and in person 2 days. I imagine just some of those. Remote 1 day and in person. In person 2 days. And I'd like to take those 2 in-person days and sometimes be able to move online and other days not. And I'm not sure which day it's going to be that I do that. We want to give faculty flexibility to do that, but we also want to give, again, clarity to students so that they can plan, so that they can know how to adjust their travel schedules if they're living off campus, or work schedules if that is the case. So we want to be able to give students as much information as possible. That includes things like whether or not you're thinking about being synchronous or asynchronous in a particular part of the course. So to the extent that we can give as much information as possible, great. We will need to be flexible. We know that, and we will continue to be as flexible as possible throughout the semester. What that process exactly looks like about how to go online, we'll try to give as much information about that once we clarify that. I don't have the process set right now. What preparation training will there be for those faculty teaching in person? One of the things that was raised was, for example, will we get some training on how to make sure that students are entering and exiting classes in a way that makes sense, that adheres to the safety guidelines. The one thing that we're doing right now, and if you go to the coronavirus FAQ webpage, there are videos that are there now, and there will be more videos, I think, that we're producing about these kinds of things. There are some sample, and I want to thank, I think it's Rebecca Hale was one of the folks who led the sample of getting students in and out of the classroom. So I want to thank you for that. But we'll have other videos like that folks can use to help guide their thinking. If you have particular questions, please raise those with either me or the dean in your area, or any dean, and we will take it to the EOC. And if there are some questions that aren't answered, we'll make sure that we get answers back and convey how we want things to be done if we don't already have the answer out there somewhere. How will we handle students who are quarantined and out of the classroom? There are those who are concerned about the clarity of how to handle students who want to be online in any class or situation, knowing that sickness and anxiety will necessitate some moments where students need to be out of the classroom. We're hoping that we can handle what happens during the course of the semester using the same tools that we have, now that we have some cameras available. We do expect that we will need to, in some instances, perhaps record some classes if faculty are amenable to that. We also know that there may be times when we simply need to make sure that students are getting materials, getting information back to them in the same ways that they would if they were missing class under normal circumstances. So this is a combination of note-taking and just kind of passing the materials back to students. In some ways, we're simply not sure yet what this will look like. And so the extent to which we need to really deploy video or deploy note takers or deploy other mechanisms is not yet entirely clear. We do know that there will be some, and right now our thinking is that we can handle it with our kind of normal practices for students that are out of class, together with some added ability to do recordings of classes, again, should the faculty member be open to that. Will there be hiring, when will we be hiring adjuncts in the fall, and how much hiring of adjuncts will we be doing? It is definitely the case that we are trying very hard to limit our hiring of adjuncts. We are hoping that the work that we've done, that the deans have done up until now, have really prepared us well to know exactly where we absolutely need an adjunct and where we've had to move around. You may already have been in conversation about moving around classes, taking some different choices, particularly when there were low enrollments. And so, we're hoping to watch very carefully over the course of this early part of this week to see how things are shifting now that the classes are, the class schedules have been announced and set to students. After the first few days of this week, we should be able to be ready to proceed and know a lot more about what our class schedules are really going to look like, what our enrollments in various classes are going to look like. But we do anticipate some flux now that students have access to which classes are in which particular formats, and that registration has been opened up, and that they are now making some changes to their schedules over the course of this early part of this week. what support is there for non-traditional classroom spaces to ensure that the learning environments are safe as possible? All of that work has been done, and great care has been taken to look at lab spaces, at performance spaces, for all different kinds of different things, studio spaces. All of those things have been taken into account. I want to thank Keith Crumpy and Lynn Horgan for an immense amount of work to really make that happen. But if you feel that in particular, there's something about the classroom that you may be in, whether it's a non-traditional classroom or a special space of any kind or not, or even a traditional space. If you might think that the class that you're in is somehow not really well suited to the particular enrollment, the particular class that you have, you have some nervousness about being in a particular space, want to ask that everyone who feels that way about a particular space, feel free to send an email to fall2020schedule@unca.edu. So that's the fall 2020 schedule. That's the same email address that we used when we were asking about your kind of format, the particulars of your course format. That email will be monitored by Lynn Horgan, and we'll be in conversation with Keith Crumpy about whether that's perhaps a physical modification that might need tweaking, or just some conversation about the way that the space is physically laid out. We certainly want to encourage people to take a look at those spaces, and there's been a lot of work done over the course of the last 3 months on making sure that those spaces are physically thinned out, that there's appropriate social distancing, in some cases that there's plexiglass and other things installed. And we certainly have been, aware of things like the air exchange and those kinds of things. And so a lot of the factors that we know to be important to establish health safety have been thought about carefully. But if you have concerns, certainly want you to first think about looking at the space, reaching out to fall 2020 schedule, sending email to that address if you have questions or concerns. If we can accommodate a change, if need be, we certainly will do that. But it is certainly in some time slots, in some classrooms, for some sizes, that's possible or easy even. But in other time slots and other class sizes, it really is a very big challenge to be able to accommodate a new space unless there's a switch with another person. If a student shows any kind of symptoms, including fever, they shouldn't go to class. That is absolutely true. So does that mean that attendance policies should be more relaxed in order to prevent any potential spread? Absolutely. I want to encourage everybody to be as accommodating as possible and as reasonable as possible, knowing that it is important for folks not to be in spaces if they have any symptoms whatsoever. We want to encourage students not to attend class in those kinds of circumstances. So, and I would want to encourage every faculty member to ensure that their policies reflect that encouragement. Let's see. Are steps being taken to provide more outdoor classroom spaces? And there are lots of possibilities that some of you have provided for possible places that students could be. We certainly, there's absolutely nothing that I would want to, if you feel that you have a space that you can access that is outside and want to take a classroom outside in a particular way and maintain social distancing in that environment and engage in the same principles, please, you're welcome to do that. We have not created new outdoor classroom spaces. We have created new informal spaces outside for folks to gather, but we have not invested in creating new outdoor spaces. There are a number of factors that make that challenging to create spaces that can stand as outdoor spaces. And it raises a number of questions about how those spaces are then cleaned and how we manage that. But certainly want to make sure that you certainly should feel free to engage in outdoor space and using outdoor spaces, and would simply ask that folks adhere to the same kinds of standards that we're asking everyone to adhere to inside. And there are a number of questions about a library usage, and in particular about the library being a space that is a go-to place for students that need to be online, particularly if they are in an in-person session, need to be in an online session soon after that, and then perhaps even after that need to be in another in-person session. You know, if a person has their own laptop, then there are plenty of spaces around campus, Highsmith Union Library, outdoors. There's been, I understand that we have really pretty great coverage outdoors in all of the spaces that students might gather, again, so appropriately social distance, if they want to be in that environment in order to be able to take, sit and take their course online, an online course. So one of the questions that has been raised is, but in a library, what happens if a student wants to participate? Can they kind of be able to be in that library space and be able to be, is the audio a problem, essentially? Is the audio a problem? And the answer to that is we're hoping that we're going to encourage students to use headphones, and we're looking into securing just some inexpensive, cheap headphones for students in the event that they don't have some, so that at least they can hear and participate and be present for a course. And we think that we can manage the when it's time for a student to be speaking, which would be intermittent enough that we don't think that it would be problematic, even in the context of a library, to be able to use that, to engage in that activity in those spaces. The questions about library extend to how do we make sure that we're managing community usage. We do not expect, we are not inviting community members in. We're prohibiting, we're limiting our use of the library to only our community, our faculty, staff, and students. And although we do not have card access, I have been in conversation with Brandy Bourne about how do we make sure that we're communicating to our community members that in fact the library, for at least the time being, is only open to our own community members, students, faculty, and staff. There are a small number of other questions. I feel like I've gone over time a little bit here, and I will do my best to convey some answers to the questions that I did not get to folks. I also want to say I'll be opening up some conversations that are not in this format, but rather more conversational, an opportunity for us to engage in some dialogue and some chance for me to hear ideas rather than simply for me to just speak to you in one direction. So I'd ask faculty and hope to do one starting today. It just simply wasn't possible to do that today, given some other matters. But please be on the lookout for times when we will have that opportunity where it won't be one directional, but hopefully some smaller groups, maybe 60 at a time, opportunities for faculty to be able to engage in some conversation. So be on the lookout for when those will be held, and hopefully, like the Chancellor said about us being available at least once a week, I hope to have those kinds of conversations, make them possible periodically.
Thanks, Kai, and I appreciate all that you've shared and encourage folks to be in direct contact with Kai and Lynn and Keith Crumpy about any number of concerns and matters that you're thinking about at this point. Heather, I'd like to turn to you. I know time is short and I have a few concluding remarks here on other aspects of campus that haven't been asked about. Would you please address the issues of our shared concern about parents of children in the schools and what type of childcare that we are at least considering for a period of time here? Heather?
I'm happy to talk about that. And Chancellor, we've also had a lot of questions in the chat about furloughs. And so I think, globally, obviously a 25 or 50% cut. And as Chancellor Cable said, we believe that is a scenario and not a reality. But we, as we've said all along, we don't know what the furlough situation might look like in the future. Right now, Chancellor Cable has advocated, I think, in a positive way, and I know we're getting movement because I've gotten updates on having flexible furlough scenarios. So in our mind, we want to do it in the most equitable way. I've shared with a number of you in different town halls. The last time the state of North Carolina had any sort of furlough was in 2009. And that was a 5% salary cut across the board for everybody for a certain period of time. If we were going to be in a financial scenario where we could do furloughs, that's one scenario we would want to do. Obviously, a 50% cut is going to look different than a 25% cut or a 15 or 10% cut. But we are committed to trying to do those as fairly as we possibly can for everybody. With respect to childcare, for those of you who have dependent care needs, I see you and I hear you. We did explore trying to fill the gap and possibly having some sort of provision of childcare, and it's just not something that we can do as a campus community. The licensing, the building code requirements, and then also just looking at the different ages and what we would need to do. Buncombe County and Asheville City Schools have said that they are going to do the 1 week on, 1 week off. I know that some daycares remain closed, some are open, a number are open. If you are a faculty member, and we got this specific question for faculty saying, if I'm teaching in person, but now I have childcare needs every other week, what am I supposed to do? You can still, and I'm going to put the form in the chat here. It's been sent out by Provost Campbell a number of times. That is for faculty. You can fill out that form if you need to teach online or have some sort of flexibility. For our staff, for those of you who can work remotely and that works for you for your dependent care needs, please talk to your supervisor. We have the teleworking form available. If you feel like you're not getting any movement with your supervisor, please reach out to HR. For our employees who don't have remote work options, and we have folks who don't have those, and you have dependent care or child care needs, please reach out to HR and we can talk you through your options. So we do have options, and I think similar to what Kai said about making sure that we are flexible with students and with attendance, we need to be as flexible and humane with all of ourselves, with our colleagues, with those who report to us about childcare needs, dependent care needs, and other things. So I know we're over time, and Chancellor, I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you, Heather. And again, urging folks to be in direct touch with the HR staff about your own individual needs, because this is a moment where being both humane and customizing things to the extent that we can to meet the needs of every one of the members of our academic community, staff, faculty, and our students, is what we are striving to do to any extent possible. And Heather can be a real help in that. A couple of things, and I'll be very fast about these. Jeremiah, I saw in the chat that you are saying if we go to an online only option, would the start and the end date of the semester be any different? And the answer to that is no. We will open August 10th and we will finish our semester on Friday, the 20th of November, regardless of what teaching format the UNC system tells me we can or should do. So just in case that is helpful to answer that question, Jeremiah, thanks for it. What about athletics? As you know, that's one of the big issues in American higher education, has some global impacts for some campus. At this point, we have 277 athletes who are scheduled to join us across all 4 classes of the university. At this point, we are a part of a group called the Big South, which is our Division I conference. Hampton University has pulled out and said they will not do any fall sports. We have the option to consider that as well. We're working closely with the students and the coaches to determine what is best. Obviously, athletes have an unusually difficult time with social distancing, masks, and all the other things that we would require for good health practice and virus mitigation. We'll keep you posted. I think we'll need to make a decision sometime in the next 6 days or so. I hope sooner rather than later. And so we'll keep you posted about what those plans are. Ollie, our 2,500 Ollie students and members of the Ollie organization have decided that they will stay off campus and do online only for all of their programming this semester. We are pleased about that because some of the Ollie members are at an age group that would be high risk. So we are pleased about that and really grateful to Catherine Frank for her ongoing, just superb leadership in that area. We have also closed all of our university facilities, as hard as it was to make this decision, to any outside groups. We will have students coming once we're set up in admissions to be able to have a tour, be masked, and so on, and in contained spaces on campus, not interrupting classes and so on. But for all of the other community partners we have and so on, we're finding virtual ways to work with them rather than bringing their individual members or younger students or class visitors from the 6th grade and the city schools and so on. We're closing our campus to that. Please mark next Monday, July 27th at 2 p.m. for a follow-up town hall so that we can share where we are on that scenario planning directive and any other decisions that have been made over the course of the upcoming now 6 days before that happens. Please know that I realize that this is a very difficult and very uncertain time for all of us. I, like you, am carrying a heavy worry load of all of the what ifs, and have we done this, and have we done the very best we can on this particular detail or item or approach or process. I'll carry that worry, and I want to take as much of that off of you, particularly our faculty and staff, as I can. I have an equally heavy commitment that we try to do the very best if we are opening in person to stay as healthy and safe and protected with each other and among each other to the extent possible. But either way, this is a time to be humane with each other, to assume positive intent, to know that the myriad of decisions that are being considered and made are ones that we will consider very deeply and carefully in light of the important work we have to do, and yet knowing that the system is also involved in telling us what to do in some cases. So please find that humane spirit that's been characteristic of this institution for decades. This is a time when we can really use it with one another. And I'm deeply grateful to all of you. I sound like a broken record in that over these last 4 months, and for that, I'm sorry, but I still mean it in my heart. This has taken an enormous toll and energy, physical, mental, emotional energy out of all of us to some extent. And I am grateful that we are leaning forward to do the best and the right thing that we can, aware of all of these matters in front of us. We are here with an academic mission. We hope we will be able to do some of this or all of it in person to some extent this fall. And at some point there will be a vaccine. And this single vortex issue of this virus with no vaccine will subside in some manner and go away from us. And we can resume more, even if it's a new normal, resume back to normal and the things we love to do on behalf of this institution and for our students and for each other. So thank you. I'm grateful. We will remain clear and honest and transparent with you. And I look forward to our follow-up call next Monday and the subsequent Mondays following that to stay in good, close communication. If anyone has further concerns and wants to address me personally and privately, please email and we'll make a time when we can talk or visit together. Thank you, everybody, and thanks for your time despite the fact we've gone over today. We really appreciate this chance to talk with you. Thanks again, everyone.